I have been chasing this one for several years, and I finally caught it. Welcome to the show, DP, Director Extraordinaire, Bradford May. Thank you so much, Mr. May, for coming on Bonehead and taking the time to hang out with us. It means the world to us.
Pleasure.
And my co-host James, usually starts. We try to go out of our way to ask interesting questions, but I
Okay.
bet you've been asked this several times simply because of this series
Of course.
that I am a huge fan of, actually, especially before it went to Canada. But James, do you want to ask the question? Because James and I have had our own personal experience of this great science fiction author that I'm supposed to say science fiction. James, what am I supposed to say?
Speculative fiction. And it's speculative fiction. It's his preferred terminology. What's his preferred terminology?
Right.
I bet you know who we're talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
James?
So you worked or adapted, directed. So Harlan Ellison adapted Stephen King, and you directed the episode of The Twilight Zone. And I just wanted to ask if there were any stories about that or anything that you could share about that, because obviously those are two names to conjure with, and I'm just fascinated by that those figures, but also that episode.
Well, when I started the Twilight Zone, I was asked to come on the Twilight Zone, and at the same time that the Twilight Zone was getting started on CBS, Steven Spielberg was doing Amazing Stories.
Yep.
Steven asked me to come in and meet him at Amblin. And I had already met with Phil DeGuerre and the heads of CBS about possibly shooting and getting my chance to direct on the Twilight Zone series. That was in 1985. Both series were starting up at the same time, gentlemen. And I met with Steven, and he wanted to alternate directors of photography. He had already hired one of those, then I was going to be the second. But I had a crew that had been working with me probably for the last 5 years. That was down to the grips, electricity, everything that was involved. And I'm a very loyal man. I believe in loyalism. And I told Steven that I had a chance to direct on the Twilight Zone if I did go in and shoot it. And he said, well, we have directors and, that could happen down the line, but we really want you to come on. But we also have this other cameraman we've dedicated to him, and he's going to bring his crew with him. And I thought about it for a little while, and I said, Steven, I'd love nothing more than to be part of your family, but I'm going to go and do the Twilight Zone because the executive producer was Phil DeGuerre, and he is now no longer with us. But Phil gave me the opportunity to become the director of photography on Simon and Simon.
Yeah.
So I had done the first two pilots with a gentleman by the name of Tom Del Ruth, who's a tremendous cinematographer. And I worked with him on many, many shows. And when we did Simon and Simon, we did the pilot, he left to do another show. And he said to Universal and to CBS and to Philip, Bradford is ready to go, and he'll do a great job for you. So I was kind of committed to Phil DeGuerre for that reason. And he also allowed me to become a director. The first episode that I directed after shooting many was Grandma, written by Stephen King and adapted for the screen by Harlan Ellison, who was one of the spectacular writers that we had on the Twilight Zone series. It was Camelot. It was no one had done anything like it before, although Stephen was doing it on Amazing Stories, but we were doing as many episodes as we could. And none of the episodes had time to them. They were just, sometimes they were 8 to 10 pages. Sometimes they were 40 minutes, things that had to be cut down. But in the hour episode, usually we would show 2 to 3 episodes. So on Grandma, William Friedkin, who is no longer with us as well, passed away last year.
Yep.
William was designated to do an episode called Night Crawlers, and I shot that with him, and we successfully completed that. And then he was going to come back and do Grandma. He had some family problems, so he decided to tell Phil and CBS. He said, Bradford will come in and do a great job on this show. He knows exactly how I was prepping it. So why don't you let Bradford direct the show? So I directed it and also DP'd it. And that was not my first directorial assignment, but it certainly was something that catapulted me into my directing career, which took place not too long after that. I pretty much became a full-time director. And also on all those shows, I served as cinematographer as well, on great many of them. But that's kind of what happened with Grandma, and I went on to do a couple of more after that before I left and started doing movies of the week myself as a director, which I had to leave episodic at that time because I had inroads into doing movies of the week for CBS and NBC, and turned into doing miniseries, and here we are. It's been a fantastic journey, gentlemen. Fantastic.
Well,
Well,
go ahead, James.
oh, well, I was going to say, and just for anyone that hasn't seen Grandma before from the Twilight Zone, you may be aware of this, but it was recently ranked by Vulture magazine online as the ninth out of 27 television adaptations of Stephen King, and they denote that it really captures the heart of the story in a way that a lot of television adaptations can't do. So, if you're listening to this and haven't seen it, go out and find it. It's definitely worth your time.
I will definitely do that. Thank you very much. When you do these things, you can only hope when you're any part of the entertainment field that you leave a legacy behind of some kind, and that was important to me. I had a great time directing it. It was a lot of fun. Little Oliver Barrett was, I guess he was 12 years old at the time. I haven't been able to get in touch with him during any things that we've done on the Twilight Zone, any showings and airings and viewings and signings and things like that. He's kind of gone incognito, but I'm glad that it felt that way, and I'm certainly glad that people enjoyed it as much as I did directing it and shooting it.
Well, I have two questions to follow up that, and we usually start in a different way. So you were right. You called it Camelot, and I would have said it's a murderer's row, just like that first season of Amazing Stories. And just because you have so much, and we've had Mick Garris on the show before, who also
Sure.
started on Amazing Story, and just go on and on and on, but they're fantastic. What I'd like for you to talk about, and you talked a little bit about this during the commentaries, and I don't know how much you remember on the DVD commentaries that you've done,
Yes.
but they shot them on film and then transferred them to videotape. And I know Joe Dante, who was another director on the show, who we've not been able to get on the show before, but has talked about it, just how unfortunate it was that they were transferred to videotape.
Yes.
Do you
Well,
mind,
I think
explaining that to our audience and how that works a little bit, especially those people who may not be so, accustomed to just how this works?
well, in 1985, we were still, of course, shooting on film.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, the editing became portioned so that it was actually done digitally. So we weren't film editing any longer. A lot of my lighting was very low key for certain reasons, depending on the certain episode. And what was fabulous for me as a professional was the fact that um, I was able to do something different all the time, and my crew was able to do something different. We weren't working on a normal episodic show where you do 22 shows like when I directed Jags,
Yeah.
some actors, some guest stars, but it was basically the same theme and the same situation. This was an anthology series, so it was very beneficial creatively for me. But once we started going into the uh, digital editing, it upset me because I always used to go to the lab at 4 o'clock in the morning before call and see the dailies come off right out of the soup. And it was just breathtaking to see that film in the morning, and also taught me a lot about what I was doing because you never stop learning. But what happened was when we went to digital film editing, some of the uh, some of the darker footage didn't come out as well as I wanted it to, and I think that was responsible for the transferring it to the video situation. And I had to change my lighting situations in order for that to continue, so that I was somewhat happy for it, so it could continue to have a life that it has had throughout. Whether it went to DVDs or however you're going to, get it streaming wise or whatever. So we did change up a little bit on that, because certainly what I was able to do with film, once we went to digital editing, it was a little different as far as the lighting was concerned. So um, basically, we changed our ways a little bit, and it didn't affect us all that much. We just had to work at a little bit higher key. But everything became digital, and obviously the film had a wonderful texture to it, and each episode that we did, I was able to do something differently, but you can almost feel it on film. And even today, everything that I do digitally um, just feels a little too real to me and a little too front.
Yeah.
uh, and I think that seems to be the overall problem. And I know, guys like David Fincher, and uh, there's a few others that
Christopher Nolan, Tarantino,
yeah, they like to use film. And
they
if
like
I
to
was
use
going to
film.
do I was going to do something tomorrow, guys, I would definitely do Super 35, and I would do it on film, and I would use a Panaflex camera, and I wouldn't go with Sony, and I wouldn't go digital, because there's a certain feel that I think has escaped us in the digital realm. And I think that's why you see these film people, like the ones we've talked about, wanting to do their shows in film, because there's a certain texture, and there's also a certain feel that you can get as far as the amount of stop changes and the ratios that you use.
Yeah.
Digital is a little tougher when you're shooting into hot windows, or you want to create hot light. You still have to stay within the realm of where the IT wants you to try to keep it so that it can be used the way they want it, and digitally enhanced or whatever. In those days, when I was doing the Twilight Zone, there was no digital enhancement. It was what I decided to do.
Yeah.
That's what the look was, and that's what it came out to be. So I was always excited when I went in the morning and saw it, because I was the only one that kind of knew that what it was going to look like. We didn't have iPads at the time. We didn't have monitors. We didn't get that until late '88, and where you could, everybody could actually see what was going on. So it was really down to going into those dailies every day, and being excited about what we had done, and learning a lot as well. I mean, obviously, I was taking tremendous chances, and I wanted to do as many different things as I possibly could, because of it being the anthology series that it was. And I think, to me, in my career, was probably the most exciting, photography wise, that I was ever able to achieve, because we were able to do different episodes with different people, different thoughts, different ideas, and different directors, including myself. But we worked with some wonderful directors. Wes Craven started the series.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did he direct
I love
Saturday? I can't remember.
He did Saturday. We did that with Bruce Willis, and
Yep.
Bruce had just gotten Moonlighting at that time.
Mhm.
And I remember the last night that we shot the show. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but he plays two roles.
Oh, we've seen it.
Yeah, inner self and whatnot. And it was the phone booth scene that we finished with downtown LA. And I opened the door, and I gave him a big hug, and I said, "You are an extraordinary actor, and you are going to have a terrific journey in this business." And he said, "Thank you, Bradford. I do appreciate it. I've had a ball on the show." And he went on to tell me that nobody at ABC wanted him to do Moonlighting,
Yep.
except one guy, and that one guy was the man that said it's going to be Bruce Willis. And I think that's kind of the way this business operates. You have to have a champion somewhere along the line. And I've had many, and I've been a champion to many as well.
That's good. Well, and as the corporatization, I'm sorry, James, real quick. I mean, it was more and more, it's more focus groups, more and more and more. There's less, I mean, yes, are there evils for one gatekeeper? Yes, but the one good thing is that for some of these showmen, especially historically, were that they were showmen and it was
Right.
show business, and they would sometimes take a gamble where
Yes.
gambles have. Sorry, we could lament this for the next hour and a half. James, what was your question?
Well, and I was going to say actually something you said early on struck me because
Uh-huh.
we've interviewed a lot of people who have done props work and camera work, and one of the things that you said that struck me was you were really loyal to the crew that you had built up around you. And we have interviewed people before that talked about that's one of the challenges they have staying in the business is they would be working on something and then that would close and they would immediately have to try to find something else. And
Hmm.
so can you talk a little bit about, what drove that loyalty that you had to the crew that you formed and why that was so important to you?
Well, I think it reverts back to family and sports in a lot of ways. Um, I played baseball for a great part of my youth, um, all the way through playing here at Notre Dame High School in the Valley here in Los Angeles. And it was always a team effort for me. I worked for a tremendous amount of wonderful directors, actors, producers, crew members, and I took from all of them and I created my own brand. But my brand was have the people with me because I don't do it alone. I wanted people to be part of my family. I'm a family man myself. I enjoy family. I came from a large Italian family. You wouldn't know that with the last name May, but that's another story. But I think the loyalism is the fact that it was family to me, and it was people. Once I knew that I could rely on people, they knew what I wanted, and it was pretty much sign language. We That's why I was able to be a director and the director of photography because for so many years I had the same people with me. It was like nobody ever knew that I was spending more time directing or DPing. It was just filmmaking, and that's what I pride myself on because I came up through the ranks. I was a second assistant cameraman at Universal way back in 1968. Was hitting the slate, so I went from huge cameras and heavy lighting all the way through my journey where we were using very little light and less instruments and things like that. So I think the real answer to your question is, to me, it's like a sports team. Everybody has to pull their weight. If somebody doesn't do well, we all don't do well. If somebody helps me get to where we need to be and help me achieve my dream and my vision, those were the people I wanted around me. And I was able to keep people with me for a great deal of time until I started going to Canada and things started going in there. And I created my own crews up there as well. I would do 3 or 4 movies a year up in Canada, and I used the same people there. So I just took that philosophy,
Yeah,
which we called the May Way, which had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the philosophy of filmmaking and life,
yeah.
and how you treat people, and how you treat people with love and respect, and let them do their jobs, hire them properly, and keep them with you, and they will support you throughout.
That's
Thank you.
fantastic. Yeah, I bet that's cost you some jobs too,
Absolutely,
because
it always costs you jobs, Joe.
I'm thinking of my last year and a half of you very much, you and I have and probably James as well, but I've been in management for a long time, and you and I have a very, and sometimes it costs you, but at the end of the day, you can look yourself in the mirror.
Doesn't really matter. You're liked by some. You march to the beat of your own drummer. Some people enjoy it. Some people don't enjoy it. But I've been very fortunate that people have enjoyed it because I'm efficient. I'm very knowledgeable, and I genuinely treat people with love and respect. And just because there's a title in front of my name, that doesn't give you the ability to
Treat
not
them like
treat people.
shit.
I
Yeah.
mean, I worked for a lot of directors and directors of photography coming up through the ranks in the late 60s and the 70s who felt they were doing it by themselves. So that was another kind of situation that I let myself fall into, which was, if that were the case, there'd be one lunch, and there's many more than one lunch. And when you make a movie, And when I always call it a movie, whether it's television, a commercial, whatever it is. When you make a movie, you commit yourself to doing the very best work you can, and it doesn't really matter what they're paying you or how they go about it. And I've always considered myself to be a consummate professional when it comes to that, because I love the business and I love film, and I'm fourth generation in this industry. And my family started in it very, very early. I'm the only one that went on to be a director, showrunner, producer. My dad was a cinematographer,
Yeah.
uh, and my uncle was one of the supreme key grips during the '60s and the '70s, and I've been on set since I was 3 years old. So I've had a chance to see it all, and I promised myself once I got a chance to do that, it would be Camelot, no matter where I worked, no matter who I was with, that I would envelop everyone to make them think that they're making the movie with me. They're not working for me.
Yeah. I have so many questions about Twilight Zone, but I also have so many more questions
Please do.
about I
Go.
well the thing is you worked with so many good directors, ranging from, I mean, like I said, Joe Dante, Wes Craven, and then writers as well, and one Kentuckian, Tommy Lee Wallace.
Yes, Tommy, absolutely.
So, who directed, and there's so many interesting things about that show because it was so weird and different, especially when you're talking about the time, the fact that network television just greenlit this thing, and
Yeah.
where some segments were only 10 minutes, and that's all the story needed to be. Tommy Lee Wallace directed a really great one, the futuristic one about the kid. And
Yes.
there's so many good ones. But that leads me to the point of what are some of so we love Ellison, Tommy Lee Wallace. What is and I'm so sorry, my mind went blank. What
It's
is
okay.
one of your best stories with working with any of these directors? One of your favorite stories, maybe Harlan doing something batshit, because Harlan actually hit James. Well, pointing the wrong way. Harlan actually hit James with a piece of glass once. So when we say we have Harlan stories,
Yeah,
we
I'm sure
do
you do.
too.
Harlan, you know, he always liked to take, he always wanted to take credit for Grandma,
Yep.
uh, but
He does it on the commentary.
yes, he does. And then finally, at the end, he'll say, "No, but Bradford, did a great job and whatnot." Remember, I actually replaced Billy Friedkin because he had family problems at that
Yeah.
time. So that was kind of crazy. But I think working with Wes, as I recall, I love the man. And gentle, lovely. Hadn't worked with a big Hollywood crew in his career at that point.
That was
So
his big breakthrough as far as having money and stuff. And we've had some of his editor, Patrick Lussier, on the show
yeah,
as well before him.
yeah,
Sorry.
who did other movies. I mean, obviously, we had other editors on the
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
show,
yeah.
but that and A Little Peace and Quiet. I just I remarkable. It's remarkable to think about how he came aboard. And if you do listen to some of the commentary when we did it, he suggests that he had never worked with a crew like I had, and uh, what we were able to do for him, and how we were able to open up his vision
Yeah.
because of the style that we worked in. And it was all about the four striper. My whole thing, even before I became a director, was the director is the supreme. If he says, "Guys, I have a vision. I want to dig a hole. I want to put the camera in it, and I want to throw some dirt on it, and that's what we're going to do." And I say, "Guys, get the shovels, dig the hole." He comes back to me a minute later and says, "What's the camera doing in the ground? Let's get it out of there. I want it out of. I don't said, no. Gentlemen, let's get the camera out and pull it out." The director is the man. He has to have the vision. I'm a little different because I came from the cinematography background, and I also came from knowing all of the positions, whether it was a first assistant cameraman pulling focus, hitting the slate, and taking care of the equipment. Camera operator. I was only a camera operator for a very short time, only a couple of years, and that was what you needed at that time to be able to move up.
Yeah.
And I was a young man. I was 29 years old when I started it. On a CBS TV series, Simon and Simon. The average age of directors of photography at that time were 65 years old. So I
Really?
was a brick. I did things differently. I had learned doing features with wonderful cinematographers who were introducing soft light to the business and getting away from hard light. and going very sourcey. So I brought that in, and I was a maverick for sure. They were kind of blown away by it, and it suited me well and continues to.
Before James, if you don't mind me asking one more question, then I'll let you have one because I want to ask about you have something very similar with someone you worked with on Monster Squad, Peter Himes, as
Yes,
far as being the DP and the director.
yes,
Do you mind talking a little bit about, because I know this is aggravating to a lot of maybe independent filmmakers who came up through the, what do you mean I can't touch the camera and move it over here and I have to have the union, you know what I mean?
I
So
do.
can you talk a little bit about that control? As far as and a good example would be I know I've heard John Carpenter say I need a DP for lighting. I know where I want the camera. I'm going to tell you where I want it
Absolutely.
for lighting. And so can you talk a little bit about dealing with different directors like that? And also as yourself, I know I'm the camera's mine. I am the DP and the director.
Mhm. Well, actually, bringing up Peter Himes, who I believe just had a birthday the other day, and I was texting with him. Uh, he was very instrumental. He was one of those guys that brought me on to do Monster Squad
Yeah.
because I was going to do a movie with him, and he did not have a union card at that time. He was only a director, and it was a big Hollywood movie, and it was called Star Chamber,
Uh-huh.
starring Michael Douglas. And Frank Yablans and Fox came to me and said, "Would you stand by and put your name on this picture, but Peter wants to shoot the film." And I was in between Simon and Simon. The first piece of it had been canceled. So I was available and I met with Peter, and I just thought the world of him. I loved his attitude. I loved his, his, his whole thing that he was able to communicate what he wanted to do. And I said, "Listen, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'm here, but I'll stand in for you," because the union would not allow him to shoot. So I knew a lot about that.
Hmm.
I did leave about 3 weeks into prep because Simon and Simon got picked up, and I said, "Peter, I've got to go. I've got to do my own show, and it's nothing about you." And he said, "Bradford, I get it completely. But I'm going to direct and shoot," which he continued to do and did get in the union later on, and we helped him do that. But Peter had a very good vision. There's one thing when you're directing and you're also the cinematographer. When you're prepping and you're picking locations, you don't have someone else there with you that needs to go to the production manager later and say, "Well, I don't know if he's going to do this or that, so we have to have this equipment, or maybe could we paint, or can we do this, can we do that?" So you have this situation where you have a lot of meetings about nothing except when I'm doing it and I'm DPing it, I'm the man at that point. And I'm not saying I'm the man because I've told you how much everybody else means to me, but I know what I'm going to do. I know what it's going to look like. And I'm very fast at it because I've been doing it for so long. I've had other guys DP for me.
Hmm.
Uh, it doesn't mean that my vision doesn't come across any differently, but the ones that I have shot and directed mean a lot to me because it just makes me a filmmaker rather than saying I'm the DP or the director. There's many directors that came on the Twilight Zone who had no idea about even how to set a shot, but they were good directors, but they didn't know much about the camera. They didn't know about the technical stuff of what it takes to do what we try to do within the time limit that you have in television. Now, obviously, it's not an open easel. At the end of 12 hours, if you're not done, there's something that's not going to be in the movie. So you have to be careful about that. And, in England, the camera operator works with the director in setting the shots, and the director of photography just lights them. So there's a different way of working there. And whenever I worked with a director that was very camera savvy, hop on the camera, do whatever you like, and I'll take over and I'll light what you show me and what you want to do. And if he had suggestions about the lighting, I was more than open to that. But most of the time, they were they wanted me to do it, and I guess that's how it continued to go. It was the Twilight Zone series. I mean, I was able to work with 3 directors a week because we were doing these small little vignettes,
Yeah.
and that's what made it exciting for me visually. But it also was very stimulating to work with a lot of different directors because you're able to take a little bit from all of those guys if you want to or not. But they were all very excited to come and do a Twilight Zone and have it part of their reel. And I had a reputation at that time of treating directors, nicely and beautifully, and then not trying to railroad them in any way, and being as supportive as I possibly could. And I wasn't able in my journeys to find that many DPs that felt the same way that I did at that time. Sometimes they had their own agenda. And that's kind of why I started shooting and directing at that time. But I have also worked with some wonderful directors of photography on my journey, and on all my work that I'm very proud of as well. So I think the director cameraman situation is very volatile. And that's why directors, like to work with the same cinematographer all the time, same way I would like to do that as well. But I was a cinematographer, so I was able to do that. With Peter Hyams, Peter Hyams went on to direct and shoot many, many other episodes. And he left me a text the other day that just completely warmed my heart, because I said, I'm blessed to have known you and to have been part of your creative life. And he texted me back and he says, I've always adored you. So it meant a tremendous amount to me. Peter's a terrific man, and a good director, and a very stylish director for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. With all the darks and the low lighting and just,
Well, mostly smoke.
yeah.
There was a whole time in the 80s, where on Twilight Zones especially, I would have the special effects guys start smoking the stage half hour before everybody got there. And at that time, I was still smoking cigarettes. So I have to tell you, most every one of the Twilight Zones, the sets were completely smoked. We wouldn't let anybody open the doors because it was the style. It was early 80s and mid 80s, where smoke and enhanced lighting through windows and stuff. So we did that. Now they're still doing it, but we were doing a lot of that at that time. A lot of handheld and things of that nature, and people have continued that feel on throughout the years.
No, it's really different. And like I said, if people are listening right now and have not experienced it, definitely go out and check it out. I'm not exactly for sure where it's streaming, but you can still buy the DVDs on Amazon and throughout, and definitely check it out. There's a lot of wonderful episodes, especially in that first season, first
And
from
the first season really, really good, and
yeah,
those are the ones that Wes was on, and Tommy. Um, I'm trying to remember some of the other guys there.
Joe Dante. There's so many different ones. Yeah.
Everybody, and Billy Friedkin, of course, coming in, and I was so blown away because I loved the French Connection and what he did on that, and to finally meet him, and he came in, he had an ascot on and his big glasses, and
He looked the part.
oh my God, this is I've really hit it. I'm working with Billy Friedkin, and
And you
it
talked about on the commentary about his complete lack of consideration for the filmmaking as far as we're going to do a jump cut here. I don't care.
Yes. Well, and also taking the looks around. He just always went for the very best shot that he wanted to make. He didn't really care about whether somebody was looking left, looking right, which we do, and that's filmmaking 101.
Yeah,
Uh, but he would jump cut, and he was doing that very early on in his career. And when we did Night Crawlers, I'll never forget a quick story. We
please.
were out on Sierra Canyon Highway. That was the diner, the physical diner that we used for the exterior. We also built it on the stage at CBS, where we did most of the interiors, and I thought it matched in pretty darn well. But he was shooting real flares, and he wanted cars. He was pulling gas tanks out of cars so he could actually blow them up. Uh, and I remember, and I think all my crew would remember the day that he talked to Scott Paulin just before he goes into this complete rage, and all the Vietnamese and all the stuff goes on with Nightcrawlers. You have to see it to understand it.
And remember that it played at 8 p.m.,
Yes,
not
crazy.
10 p.m. And Phil said that they think that's kind of what killed the show.
Well, I think I don't know. I think it was really the fact that Phil was just not, he couldn't figure out how to get all the episodes cut down to where he wanted them. And I think it became a creative thing between him and Jeff Sagansky at CBS.
Yeah.
I don't think it was any one episode, but I do remember Nightcrawlers. And as I said, my crew would remember it as well. It was late, very late night, and fire outside, and we have smoke, and we have sparks, and he got Scott Paulin all jacked up and walked up to him and he said, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" And Scott said, "Yeah, I trust you." And he's crying, and Billy smacked him as hard across the face as he possibly could and said, "Roll it." And I'll never forget that. It was just an unbelievable situation. And then later on, watching dailies the next day, one of my assistant cameramen didn't have something in focus, and we were in the screening room. And Billy said, "What the heck, Bradford? Why is it out of focus?" I said, "Billy, he's too close to the camera. We can't focus any closer." He said, "Well, I don't care about that. Get it in focus." I said, "Okay, then move the actor back a little bit, or we have to move the camera back." He didn't care. He just, once he got going, it was intense. And I took a lot of that from him, that everything is intensity. You need intensity. You have to have fun. But he was very, very intense. And sometimes when you're making those kind of movies, you have to have that.
He
You
did
know,
this. He did the same thing to the actor that plays the priest at the end of The Exorcist. Do you trust? He tells the story. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? And then smack the shit out of him.
I think that was part of his deal. And
Yeah.
he just did it. I think he did it with Jason Miller.
Yeah.
Before he says, "Come into me," and jumps out the window.
Yeah.
Billy was an intense man. You look at his movies and they show it's Sorcerer.
I was about to say, at least you weren't shooting Sorcerer, probably
Yeah,
one of his best films that no one, that unless you're a kind of a film geek like us, a lot of people don't know Sorcerer, but it's an insane movie that they went out and shot.
it is an insane movie, and he wanted me to shoot Live and Die in L.A., but I was tied up and couldn't do it. And but I was very excited that he, just from our Twilight Zone experiences, wanted me to do that, and I would have loved to have done it. He was just a masterful filmmaker, and a tough guy to work with. He was a tough guy to work with, not for me, but for actors and producers. He wanted what he wanted,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't take anything less than that.
Oddly enough, we had BJ McDonnell, who's also a director, photography, cameraman, and he was on our show a few months ago, and he worked with Billy on a couple of his last movies, and he was talking to, he
Did
had
he
the
do?
same.
I think he did Live and Die in L.A. I'm not quite sure.
No, he's a little young. He did, I think he did Killer Joe
Huh.
and maybe worked on Bug, and Killer Joe is probably his last great film. But anyway, he talked about that didn't dissipate as he got older, and he loved him for it too. Some people hated him for it, but he also loved him. Also, he was talking about how he was commenting to BJ about how his wife had a great ass, but that's a whole other story that I could tell you about later. And as we move along, I know I get interrupting James. James, did you have your next question?
Well, I just wanted to, because you've worked on, if we divided things into genres, which I'm always hesitant to do, but you mentioned Simon and Simon. You worked on a lot of the kind of detective shows and things like that. And one that you
Hunter.
worked on, Hunter, one that you worked on though, that when I saw it, I was like, I've got to ask a question about it, because I think if my research is correct, you directed 6 episodes of the show The Equalizer.
I did. Yes.
And so I wanted to ask about that because that was one of my father's all-time favorite shows. It's one of the few things he would stop and watch,
Yeah.
and would actually follow. And so as you approach a show like that, which has sort of a not a quasi mysterious angle to it anyway,
Mhm.
just what were your experiences as you approach these different things? Because you worked on a lot of different detective cop type shows, and how do you approach that in a way that, as you're thinking about how you're going to film it, they don't look the same, they don't really, they're very unique.
I think, James, I think basically, when you go in to do episodic, And it was soon after I became a director that I was called by Jim McAdams, who was producing The Equalizer, and he called my agent and said they had a very big show, a two-parter to do, and it was right around Christmas time, between Christmas and then come back after hiatus and do the other hour. I always tried to do whatever they had been doing, because you can't go in and completely change a look or style on an episodic show. I think it's your job to go in and do the very best job you can. I always came in trying to allow the actors to do the very best work that they could. I wanted to always be there with them. I come from no video assist, so even when I directed, I was always right near the camera because that's where I grew up, and I wanted to be there. But it was also to have my helping hands out to the actors. A lot of the actors that do episodic don't get directed. The director who comes on for that episode takes, the people that they've hired and they try to mold them for that particular episode. And I worked with Michael Moriarty and all the rest of these people on the Equalizer. I was able to enhance Edward Woodward's work style. He had just had a heart attack, was off the show. Robert Mitchum came in for a while on the show. And when I came in, I fell in love with this man, very straight up Englishman. And I'm a very huggy person. I come, as I say, from the sports world and family. So,
And Italian, right?
Exactly. As soon as I finished that first episode, I came up and I gave him a big hug, and he was very, very stiff. And I said, I'm sorry if I've offended you, but I thank you so much for allowing me into your family and allowing me to direct this episode, because it's been a fantastic, exciting situation for me to be here with you. Okay. I left New York. I got 4 more shows in a row that I was doing because Edward just loved what I was able to do. So I try to adapt when I was doing episodic. In answer to the question, don't change too much about what it is that they do. Go in and do the very best job you can, direct it, shoot it very stylized, and you've got to make the crew happy. You've got to make the production people happy. Everybody's looking at you. You're just out there. You're a visitor. So I tried to enhance that family situation and that style that I have had throughout my career,
Right.
wherever I went. So I was always very much accepted, and they allowed me to do whatever it is that I wanted to do, because they knew that I knew what I was talking about, and I didn't try to put anybody through any paces that I wouldn't have done, whether it was when I was pulling focus or camera operating or whatever it might have been. But every show is a bit different, and you have to adapt to that. I always wanted to be a director and a cinematographer that wasn't pigeonholed into something where this is all he does and this is how he does it, and every show looks pretty much the same. I always approached it differently, because my mind's eye always saw something different, no matter whether it was Midnight Caller or if it was The Darkmans, Monster Squad with Fred, The Twilight Zones. No matter what I did, I always approached it differently and wanted to do something that I hadn't done before. I got a lot of the same techniques, of course. That's all you have. But I always approached it trying to do something that I hadn't done previously. So working on different cop shows or procedurals, when I did ICE, I took a little bit away from all of those things. And we've all seen them. And I just tried to tell those kinds of stories that made people stay interested in what we were trying to say, and that's what makes it exciting, I think, is the ability to do something different, but also use the same techniques.
Yeah. And so I have so many questions, and I know I've got only a few more minutes, but I want to ask about Fred Decker. I want to ask
Sure.
about Gary Cole, but I've got to do this because, as you can see behind me to this side,
Yes.
I am a Sam Raimi fan, Rob Tapper. I've had the privilege of interviewing Sam.
Good.
And can you talk a little bit about how you landed those Darkman 2 and Darkman 3 directing gigs?
Absolutely.
And
Uh,
working with the late great Larry Drake, who was actually just a real mensch to me when I was able to meet him once. I hope your experience was the same, but
oh no, Larry! Oh my God! Well, God rest his soul. He was fantastic. He was terrific. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Universal called me and said, "Would you meet with Sam Raimi?" And remember, Sam has not, he had only done a couple of things at this point. He hadn't done.
it probably Darkman was his only mild hit
Yes, at that time for
at that
sure.
time. It was a number one movie, but it wasn't Batman.
No, it wasn't. But of course, he went on to do Spider-Man and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
had a great deal. But they called me and said they're doing a show called Hercules,
Uh-huh.
and it's kind of a comedy, dramedy spoof. I went in for the interview, and the writer was there, and apparently he didn't see eye to eye on what questions he asked me to do. Um, so I left that interview thinking, well, that didn't go very well. Although Sam and Rob were terrific, and um, they called me about an hour later. I was in the car, and they said, "Look, this is not going to work out." And I said, "Well, I'm really sorry that it didn't because I respect you guys, and if you ever have something that you think I'm right for, I'd love to participate." And they said, "Well, funny thing you should say that because we're coming right back at you with Darkman. Sam has just gotten Sony has just given him Spider-Man, and he's not going to be able to do the next two Darkmans. Now, at that time, they were both going to be feature films.
Oh, really?
Yes." It wasn't until the movies were made that they felt that the special effects would not hold up in the theater, so they went and put them directly to tape in those days, is what
Yeah.
they called
Straight to tape.
it, straight to tape. And we made each one of those movies, and actually, Sam later on said, "Both of yours had much more heart than mine did." That's probably the way we wrote them and had them. But thank you. Um, but that's how it worked out with Dark Man. I shot them as well, and Rob and all of the people there were terrific with me and loved what I did. But that's basically it. Was I didn't get Hercules, and within the hour they called and said, Sam has just gotten Spider-Man, and we really want you to do these two Darkman movies. And we're going to do them back to back, and we're going to go to Canada to do them. Can you do them? Are you available? And I said, I'm ready. I'll leave tomorrow if you want me to.
That's
And that's
great.
how it came. And the Darkmans were a part of my journey in my life. They were very instrumental in my filmmaking career, and I enjoyed working with it. I loved Arnold, and I loved everybody that we had. Jeff,
I
we
was about
brought
to
in.
ask about Jeff Fahey, one of the great character actors.
Yeah, and he was great at it, And he said, I'm not going to look at those other Darkmans because I just got my own idea about the way I want to go, and we talked about it. And I said, yeah, let's go for it. And he was a bit over the top, but that's what those movies were. That's
Yeah.
what they were done. I mean, when somebody says he's coming back, and Larry Drake comes back and he's alive after crashing in the helicopter. So yeah, they were pulp. They were comics,
Pulp
and
was the exact word I was
we treated
thinking.
them as that. We lit them that way, and we treated the acting that way. We didn't take ourselves too seriously, but we also wanted them to be dramatic in their feeling as well. But in today's world, you probably couldn't make it. My kids keep saying, Why don't you go back and to Sam and say, let's do it?" Because we wanted to do a TV version of it,
Hmm.
but it just wouldn't hold up today because things are just so much different, than they were then. But a special time in my career, definitely, that Sam, who I respect completely, and Rob said, "We want you." And whenever somebody says that, it means a lot. That's for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. And you had the great Kim Delaney in it as well.
Oh, of course. Well, Kim was a good friend from Tour of Duty,
Sure
and,
doing. Right.
and we all were at parties together. A lot of us all ran together there at Universal, and I was the same age as a lot of these actors that we ran around with. With Tim Matheson for years, and and of course Kurt Russell. We were all doing Universal shows and kind of growing up together, and we don't see each other as much as we'd like. But you know, guys, it's been a fabulous journey for Bradford May. I've loved every minute of it, and I've loved all the people that I've worked with. Some of them that I didn't enjoy, you just move on from. But the good is surpassed anything that I didn't like along the way. And there's always people that are trying to either stab you in the back or you know, say things about you, and it's probably because they don't know you and they haven't worked with you. Because if you look back at, especially now with social media, years later, um, the things that people say about working with me and being part of the projects that I've been a part of, and just me as a human being are all positive, and that means more to me than anybody can imagine.
That's great. I don't want to end there because I want to give James a question, one last question, and then me one last question. Go ahead, James.
I have to ask this question because again, I think about the things that you worked on that just I gravitate towards, and I said I ask Equalizer because I remember watching that with my father. But
Yeah.
you also talking about things of their time and then kind of bringing them back. You did one of the Dukes of Hazzard movies, the Dukes of Hazards in Hollywood.
Yes, I
Uh,
did.
and if I remember correctly, that was Bob Clark was involved in the writing of that as well. And so I just wanted to ask a question about that. You know, knowing that there had been a couple TV movies about that, if I remember correctly, but about that, you know, how you got brought into that one, because that's something that I think a lot of people grew up with. And to return to that world, I will admit, I remember watching it going, yep, this is exactly as fun as I wanted it to be. This is exactly what I hoped it would be.
Yeah, we had Toby Keith on that one doing some music. So you know, I really gravitate towards music and being able to film it and be part of the directing of it. They Warner Brothers called me. I was down doing a movie for Fox. We were down in San Diego, and on the way home, my agent called me and said, "Hey, you know, there's a Dukes of Hazzard movie." I said, well, wow, Dukes of Hazzard movie, because I never worked on the TV series, although I knew everybody that worked on the TV series because the stunt, from the stunt guys to the camera guys, all of them. Because again, we all kind of ran together, and it was
Yep.
a little smaller niched situation at that time in Hollywood. Um, we all kind of knew each other. Now it's kind of blown up and it's become a little bit more global, which is fine. But not everybody knows each other as much as we did. But they Warner Brothers called me and Bob, and they said, you know, we want you to bring your style and your love to our first movie after the TV series, and it's called Dukes of Hazzard Goes to Hollywood. And I said, okay, well, I'm available. Let's come in and talk and see. I haven't read the script at that time. They said, well, there'll be one waiting at your house, and how about coming and meeting us tomorrow at the studio at Warner's? And I read the script, and it was fun. I hadn't really watched too many Dukes of Hazards at that time. I was off doing Simon and Simon and in my own world, um, but I enjoyed it because John and they were all great. Everybody was terrific. I knew Catherine socially, so that was all fun and games. And they just they wanted me to do it, and I came in and we stylized it and shot most of it on the lot at Warner Brothers, and had a ball doing it. It was just loads of fun, and the big part of that was the music that they had added to it, which was not something they did on Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, Toby Keith, and I'm not remembering the girl's name right now, but we had a ball doing it. It was a lot of fun, and I was excited to do it. It was fun. I mean, I you know, when you go back and you do things like the Twilight Zone that you grew up watching when I was 12 years old. My stepmother was one of the casting people on it, and she knew Rod. And here I am, all of a sudden, shooting the new Twilight Zone and directing it. Those kind of things are just wild. They're really crazy. And of course, the Dukes of Hazzard, The Equalizer, Midnight Callers, any of the TV series that I did.
With the great Gary Cole. Sorry, just wanted to throw.
Gary is again socially we're all very close, and the memories are all terrific, and I'm very very proud of him and happy to see that he's taken over from Mark Harmon on NCIS. And he's able to exercise his tremendous abilities as an actor, and he's just an all-around gentleman.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, and I normally don't ask this, but I'm curious, is there one that got away from you that you just pine for sometimes, a project that you just think back? Because you, by the way, you're still alive, you're still kicking, you're still out there. It's not like this is, so you're still going, but is there one of those projects that's just, oh man?
Well, I would love to do a feature thriller. I haven't been able to do that. I would love to do that, but when people ask me what's your favorite movie that you've done or thing that you've worked on, I always say I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that I get.
I'm always waiting for the next exciting part of the journey. But I'm very proud of everything that I've done. But I guess working with Steven and not doing Amazing Stories, if I would have stayed with him, I probably, as a DP, would have shot a couple of features with him before he got one at Janus. Who knows?
Yeah,
I was able, as a young man, to work with Clint Eastwood, and I took a lot from him off of Pale Rider and Outlaw Joe's in Wales when I was carrying camera cases. But you pay attention along the way. And I would recommend that anybody that does that is, no matter where you start in the business, pay attention, watch, listen, and learn, and you'll benefit from that as well. So I'm happy that I was able to do this with you guys. It's been a walk down memory lane for me, and I do appreciate the fact that you enjoy a lot of the work that I've done, and I'm very excited that you do, and it's always fun to know that people enjoy what you've done.
Mr. May,
Well,
the privilege is all ours. Sorry,
I'd
James.
say, no, I was going to say thank you for bringing, as you said, your family and your fun to everything that you've done.
Thank you.
I remember watching some of it with my father. I've watched several of it, and I'm enjoying now introducing some of it to my children. So thank you for the family and the fun through the years.
Thank you so much, guys. Really, it's a blessing, and I thank you.
Thank you for being on the show, Mr. May.
Thanks for watching, guys, and I appreciate you.
All right, thank you. Bye.